What's up, y'all? This is the Fem Future podcast where we, you, me, and the audience get the opportunity to learn from amazing women curating a better future for themselves and others. I'm your host, Amber Latrice, and today I am joined by an amazing author and speaker, Miss Keisha. How are you doing?
Hello, Amber. Hello, everyone. I'm doing great. The sun is shining today. We've had rain all week. We got the sun today. Nothing is taking my smile away. I'm here.
Awesome. So happy to hear that. We had the opportunity to connect before the podcast started, but for our audience members that haven't had that opportunity, can you please tell them a little bit about?
Yes. As you said, my name is Keisha Joseph Fisher, and I am an author. It's taken me some time to even form those words and accept it, but I can say now that I am an author. I love telling stories. I am a mother. I am a wife. I have 4 children and 2 dogs, and I live my life every day taking care of all of them, and then writing with the rest of the time that I'm allotted to myself. But yeah, I am a woman who is trying to figure out life as much as anyone else. And I love when I find opportunities like this to discuss what that journey is like with other people.
Oh man, that's amazing. So thank you for telling us about a little bit more about who you are right now. I want to take a second though to dive into your younger self. Who were you at age 16?
Funnily enough, I am writing about those times, not specifically my time, but using my experience in those days, about 30 years ago. And still, again, sorting through what that girl was like. I would like to say that I think I was at 16, just figuring out that I had a voice that was allowed to flourish, that had finally a little bit of space to thrive, especially because I was raised in Nigeria. Of course, my mother was American, dad's Nigerian, but I was raised around mostly Nigerian women and within that Nigerian experience. And, any Nigerian you'll talk to, if they're being honest, will tell you it's really difficult to feel freedom inside your own voice in that in that kind of upbringing. Wow. Of course, there is a lot of respect that's expected from all children towards anyone older. In fact, yes. Siblings, you refer to your siblings as auntie and uncle as a sign of respect. And we never did because I just couldn't. I couldn't go there with my brother. He was and my sister, she would, request it every once in a while, but we were comfortable just referring to each other with our first names, which often in most families was not allowed. And along with that regard, I had the kind of mother who was expressive because she wasn't from Nigeria. She would wear pants and she smoked cigarettes and drank beer. She had a bar that people would line up to for hours before they even opened.
Wow.
And it's like we had a party every night. We were working, the children were serving food and drinks and cleaning, but it felt like we had a party every night out of the garage to our flat in Ikoyi in Lagos, Nigeria. Anyway, of course, we're surrounded mostly by Nigerians. We're raised in Nigeria. My grandmother there, my dad's mother is Nigerian. She had a huge part in our upbringing. But I felt like being the girl that I was, who had this itch inside to, ask questions about what everything meant, from questions in the Bible to, why the leaves are falling, why it's taking so long for the mangoes to ripen, why why the cats and the dogs look the way they did. And I just had so many questions about the world, but I didn't find that there was space for me to share any of these weird thoughts, right? As a young girl growing up in Nigeria. My dad had a collection of an encyclopedia collection, and that's where I would go, searching for answers to questions, whether I had them or not. Anyway, within that quiet girl that I was forced to be, I ended up enduring quite a bit of trauma from just existing. Because when something happens to you at school and a teacher punishes you with a beating, flogging or something, I couldn't then go home and tell my parents that, I felt abused by my teacher, because the first question is, what did you do?
Yeah.
Pause it. And at school, I couldn't go to any of the teachers there and say, I am feeling sad because my mother has, for the third time in the last year or so, just disappeared, because my mother is struggling with mental health issues that, went undiagnosed, because, she left Chicago as a 16-year-old herself, was living in Nigeria and struggling with a lot of, of her own existence and a lot of her history that she kept pent up. Anyway, so really not feeling like there was a place for me to share any of my fears, my anxiety towards the world, anything that was unknown, I went inward. Life for me was, existing as the youngest of the children, floating along, being told what to do here and there, reading, because, there was no dialogue there, right? I could just fill myself with information. And unfortunately, when awful things did happen to me that we don't need to get into today, I would revert to that quiet place too. And when we then moved to the States, when I was 12 years old, I think my expectation was, America is the, land of the free. It's beautiful. They used to describe it as the land of milk and honey. And I actually, I in fact pictured milk and honey flowing through the streets. And unfortunately, life, once we arrived, didn't flow as smoothly as my expectations. We struggled quite a bit. My mother, again, still struggling with her mental health issues. And then incorporating drugs and alcohol, kept her away from us quite a bit. Eventually, when I was 15, I discovered an aunt who lived in California, my father's sister, and I wasn't in school. She'd called in the middle of the day. I was living with my grandparents, watching soap operas every day. I wasn't in school.
Yeah.
She said, what are you doing at home at 9 a.m. instead of being at school? And I said, well, I don't go to school. And she immediately said, well, then you're going to come live with me. After I explained that mom is struggling with all of these things, we live with our grandparents. Life wasn't as we had expected it to be coming to America. And so I lived with her for a year. It was really quite rough, because I was suddenly now immersed in that Nigerian way of being. Even though I was in America, I had been here for a few years, learned a little bit of freedom of expression, like my mother, learned to, trade my Nigerian accent to sound more like my mother and her people. And all of those things didn't sit quite well with my aunt, who was, a respectable Nigerian woman. She, had certain expectations of a child coming to live in our house. And I was there for a year, because we learned in that time that my mother was imprisoned. She ended up having to serve some time. So I stayed there until I was close to turning 16. So I know that's a long way to get to answering your question about who I was at 16.
No, thank you for the foundation.
Yes, I needed to place down that foundation so it hopefully clears up the way I showed up for that 16-year-old girl, right? I suddenly had my mother taken from me. We'd separated from my dad 4 years prior, and he stayed in Nigeria when we came. And so with mother being out of the picture, my sister came to Houston, where I'd gone back to for the summer. My brothers, they also were in Houston. And so the four of us decided to get an apartment together. And so the 16-year-old me was, for the first time, essentially responsible for myself. I went to school every day. I worked right after school. I walked down the street to Sonic to work and worked until 11:30 when they closed, or, clocked out at 11:30, went home, did homework with what little time I had left. Next morning, got up, went back to school, did it all over again. I was determined to finish high school. I was determined to keep that little family that my sister was trying to piece together with all the broken parts around us. Wow. And I think that's probably when I decided, or I discovered, that I liked having that freedom. I liked, knowing that I was going to be a hardworking person. I had straight A's. I was on the honor roll, and that's not easy to do with a near full-time job for $4.15 an hour, by the way, 1994 or 95. Anyway, but I discovered that I was a hustler, and I was going to, balance whatever adversities had coming my way with all of the luck that I felt I'd procured by being a good person. I could do all of it. And that year, I think I probably fell in love for the first time with a beautiful boy who, also ended up breaking my heart, as these things tend to happen, right? At when you're that young. Again, teaching me things about myself and about the world, and choosing myself when it felt like that relationship was all encompassing. It was all, it was drawing me away from the hustler that I needed to be, or that I'd become and needed to be. And during that year, my mother was released, and she started visiting us. She was at our halfway house and was visiting us. And it felt good to have now 5 of us together. And she would cook all Nigerian foods, things that we would say we missed from when she had a restaurant when we lived in Nigeria. She would come on the weekends, cook for us. We would watch, back then there was Def Comedy Jam on Fridays.
Oh man.
If you remember, we would watch movies, listen to music, dance. It felt like we were getting a piece of our old life back from the Nigeria days. And at one point, my sister and her husband, who lived between Nigeria and New York and would also come visit us in Houston, he came to visit and said, let's go to Nigeria and visit, because my dad was still there. And I was so excited to go back, see dad again, see our old house, see, our dogs weren't going to be there, of course, 4 years gone. In fact, we had pet goats. They certainly weren't going to still be there. I'm sure they, at that point, had been, consumed and digested by someone.
Understandably so, they are delicious.
Right. And it just reminds me of when my mother had said we could, of course, keep the goat as a pet on the second floor apartment. And then the goat went away for a while. We assumed that she'd been taken and was, had then been consumed, but she came back, a month or so later, pregnant, delivered the baby. Mom said, okay, now we have 2 goats in the second floor apartment as an extra pet, along with all the dogs and the cats. And really every animal that my mother, discovered, she would just say, oh, it didn't have a place to stay. Let's bring them in. She was that person, caring, loving, wanting so much for the world. It so broke my heart that it took us coming back and her being around her people and finding herself struggling to find her footing, that had to be the thing that broke her. Such a Wonder Woman-sized, being she'd been, right? Anyway, so I went back to visit Dad at 16, and I'll tell you, I never felt like I was this, beautiful girl by any means, being in having lived in Houston, where all of the beautiful girls, or all the girls considered beautiful, had the blonde hair and the blue eyes and the, white skin. And there I was with my Nigerian-ness, and my, hair was always pulled back, and my accent didn't quite mesh well with what anyone expected coming out of me. Anyway, so I was suddenly in Nigeria again at 16. And it's like, these windows opened and men noticed me for the first time. And that kind of attention coming from grown men for a 16-year-old girl was really intense, right? You couldn't tell me a thing. You couldn't tell me that I wasn't the sun, moon, and stars every time I stepped out of the house to go anywhere. So again, discovering more about who I was, and then finding that by the end of that year, or by the end of that summer, coming back home, and unfortunately, because of my mother's struggles, she had cost us the apartment. We lost everything, and I ended up having to, my sister decided she would go back to New York with her husband. My brothers found their own places, and I stuck with nowhere to be, that wasn't going to be in the arms of some man, right? As a vulnerable girl who had really no one or no guidance. My only choice was to then go back to that aunt and really try to make something out of that relationship and build something based on the kind of girl that I thought she wanted me to be. And when I went back, it was hard to fit inside this mold, right? The freedom wasn't allowed. The space to, share my my distaste for, being controlled at every turn. I think that became problematic with us, between me and my aunt. And I struggled quite a bit that year. 16 was then really rough. And I ended up, as I'd fought really hard not to, I ended up in the arms of a boyfriend who said, well, because my aunt had asked me to leave, he said, well, come live with me. And so that's when I think I was suddenly on my own, and for real this time, right? And having to navigate life from then on. And, well, we said we're focusing on 16, but, I always say, when you're left as a child to navigate the world on your own, you'll make decisions as a child would. And while I was trying to still go to school and work and maintain a relationship with, another teenager who unfortunately also had been left into the world to go, figure it out for himself. We made quite a few mistakes, and, those mistakes ended up being blessings for me. I had 2 children out of that relationship, and then the growing up really needed to happen. And listen, and they're both adult women now, beautiful, smart, college graduates. One is going to go teach, she's going to go teach English in Korea. One is going to, her job is going to take her around the world. you can't tell me that that little girl who felt so broken and had to make tough choices didn't get it right. I really hope that that my daughters know that I did everything possible for them.
I'm sure they do.
Particularly coming from, the broken foundation that I had before them. And that's how I got there. That year 16 took me left, right, and center. And it probably was the most pivotal part of my journey, because it opened my eyes to who I was, the way the world was going to receive me, and what my response was going to have to be to everybody else and everything else.
Wow. Wow.
I'm going to sip some water.
Go for it. What a powerful journey. Oh my goodness. There were so many ups and downs, so many twists and turns, so many setbacks, but you still managed to continue to progress forward. Like the strength just in your journey to 16 is wow.
I want to say that it was probably the first half of discovering for myself the one thing that my mother, or finding to be true, the one thing that my mother used to share with us when we were younger. And she would say, ain't nobody coming. No one is coming to rescue you. And, every day you wake up, when you open your eyes to the world, your stomach grumbles, you're going to want to eat. You're going to want to wash yourself. You're going to want to clothe yourself. All of those things would require me to go out there and acquire them for myself. And so learning that at that age is probably what helped me sort through, all of the cobwebs and all of the darkness to get to a place where I could, say, I'm comfortable showing my face in this way. I'm comfortable showing my children a vulnerable person, but within that, the vulnerabilities, being willing to stand through and be strong for them, right? I didn't give them the same message that my mother gave me, that no one was coming, because I knew that I was going to always be there. Wow. There wasn't anything that would separate me from my children. And even when the relationship with their father disintegrated, as it was, want to do, because we were children trying to, create a family without really any background for how that was supposed to look. But my goal was to use that hustle mentality, that hustling mentality, that drive to go out and get everything that I needed, and use that drive to raise my children. I think is the reason why we are all here today. I can tell stories about all of those experiences. I can write an award-winning book about the relationships between mothers and daughters, and how women, walk through life trying to keep our sanity. And, yes, while walking through darkness, it can be terrifying, but honestly, emerging through on the other side in that light is, what I wish for anyone who finds themselves at a young age trying to sort through their lives or survive trauma or survive, period. My advice is just always, there's always a light. It can't be dark forever. It's not always rocky in the rain, in the storm. There's always, an appeasement that comes from, that's, I think, is offered from the universe, especially when, someone finds themselves feeling like they're just floating along without any purpose. And I knew there was no way that I could come that far and not have a purpose. There was something in me that was pushing me, and I eventually discovered it. Empty my head, tell stories, and maybe one day be able to only tell stories for a living, and somehow made it happen. With tenacity, I guess. I don't know. I don't, yeah. Outside of that, it's getting up every day, right? With when the sun shines in my eyes. All right, Keisha, we got to do it again. And, using what I had in me and knowing that it could be different. There had to be something better on the other side of whatever I was dealing with, and trying to, I guess, discover about the women who had raised me over the years, what it was that drove them, and why so many of them were broken, and why so many of them were, stuck in a place that felt like they needed to, based on how they were raised, control every aspect of their lives for fear of losing control. And unfortunately, I was in the center of most of these people's need to control, the world around them. And I just, I don't know, I'm curious about all of those women, and that curiosity is what's brought me to doing this work, telling stories about women, raising my daughters and my son, my beautiful boy, and helping them, live a life that allows them access to every opportunity that they are, curious about, every opportunity out there. But hopefully guiding them with a calmed mind, with my ridiculous humor, and my love of just finding myself alive every time I wake up, and knowing that I get to do it better today. Every mistake from yesterday can be, even if it can't be erased, it can be made better today, the next day, and the next. And that's, that's how I show up.
I love it. I love it. Wow. Wow. You have had such an amazing journey, from even getting to 16 to getting to this place where you get to write these amazing stories that empower women. We've looked at the present, we've looked at the past. Now I have a question about the future. If you had an opportunity to have a conversation with your 100-year-old self, what do you hope she'd tell you about the life you lived?
You know, I hope she pats me on the back. And I'll start. I hope she pats me on the back for having the courage to chase a dream that I was told at every turn was impossible. From having my voice essentially shoved back into my mouth, and as a little girl who was only curious about the world I was existing in, right? And then finding a little bit of light as I grew older, and then as a 30-year-old woman, deciding to put a lot of those lessons inside a book, and then that, and self-publishing it, and then that book winning, best fiction of the year, and then opening other doors for me. I know, I'm sorry to plug it like this.
Yes,
but
no, please do. Please do.
But it was always a dream of mine to take the thoughts that I had and put them down, and not knowing that I could create a different kind of baby in my storytelling. But I hope with that pat on the back that, she says to me, all of the worrying and all of the sadness and the fear and anxiety about what the next day was going to bring, all of it was so unnecessary. There's a saying that someone says, that I can't even, and I'll mess up who said it, so I'm not going, I'm just, I will admit that I did acquire this knowledge from somewhere else, but when you have a problem, if you can do something about it, right? If the answer is yes, do it. If the answer is no, why worry about it, right? And so I'm hoping that when I'm 100, I hope to have the skin still.
Yes. Oh my goodness.
Because let me tell you, my grandmother and my mother, they all, beautiful women that I just always, wondered what it was that, allowed them, even with everything they had going on, they always, emerged with a glow. Anyway, outside of that, I hope to be healthy. I hope to have made a dent, and what I consider to be the only real problem with women progressing these days, because of the kind of world that I want to leave for my children. I need my daughters, as much as my son, to know that they are unequivocally allowed to dream any dream and go and collect that dream, regardless of how they showed up in the world, regardless of who they ended up being. I hope that I've made a dent, and because I won't stop shouting about how much we all deserve to live a life that feels fulfilling. It feels like I was just 12 and then suddenly 16. And at 16, right, I couldn't wait to be 18. 18, I couldn't wait to be 21. And I cannot believe how quickly all that time has gone by, how much life I've already lived, and in raising all of my children. My youngest is 13. And I have a 16-year-old who also lives in the house. And so again, and trying to remember who I was at that age, I try to show up for her in a way that I hope, gives her the space and the freedom to express herself, even when we're butting heads. Because I do hope that one day they take out into the world the people that I raised them to be, and they are better for it, and they are, able to give as much of themselves without draining themselves, to wherever they land in the world. I said my daughter's going to go teach English in Korea. The other one travels for work. My 16-year-old is, looking for colleges in the next year. And so she'll be out in the world. My 13-year-old baby boy, he's, also he's going to have to, decide where he's going to for high school in another year or two. And so things are changing all around them. If I'm here to see all of them through my old age, it'll be a blessing, but I hope that, through that pat on the back, it's because I've done some good with the time that I was given.
Oh man, absolutely, absolutely. You've shared so much. Thank you for just engaging in your vulnerability and sharing your story and allowing us to learn from your journey. As we come to a close, if you could give me or any of the listeners or viewers any advice about working to continue to intentionally curate a better future for themselves and for others, what advice would you have for us?
I would say there is, in every single one of us, there is that thing that's supposed to lead you to your passion. And it's in you for a reason, right? That nagging call in my head to tell stories, or be curious about the world. And knowing that the only place I could place my thoughts was in the pages of a book, or a journal, and that then led me to where I am today, where I now, spend my days writing. That and people call it passion, people call it your instinct, whatever it is, you can name it whatever you want, but it's in you for a reason. Please listen to it. Unless it's telling you to go out there and hurt people, turn that one off.
Right.
Right? We want to tune that one out. But if there is an urge to, learn a new language, learn to, cook something new. I don't know. I'm minimalizing what those things can be. Mine was to tell stories, and even though I never thought I would find them in the pages of a book or anyone even listening to what I had to say, I still listened to that urge, and I knew it was in me for a reason. I would just suggest, please, 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 every day you wake up, ask yourself, what am I meant to do today? It doesn't mean overwhelming your thoughts with cleaning the house, or, calling everybody back, or returning every text, or solving every problem that comes your way, just start with that one question. What can I do with myself today? What can I do that fits in today? It isn't going to overwhelm me about tomorrow. It won't cause me to panic about what's happened yesterday. How can I get through today with my sanity in place, with hopefully a smile at the end of that day? But please, please begin every day as much as you can. Who can I be today? What can I do today? How can I end it smiling?
Amazing, amazing, amazing. So thank you so much for your advice and being on the podcast. For any audience member that wants to connect with you or wants to get your book, please tell them and tell us how we can connect with you, where we can find you, and how we can get this amazing new book.
Yes. So I said a little bit earlier about my fifth baby. Fortunately, it's my fifth baby. No God like the mother. And just a quick story about how this book came to be. I wrote while my babies were little and I was running a daycare of my house so that I didn't have to pay daycare. Well, I couldn't afford daycare anyway, but in between naps, I would write. If all I got out was one line, I would write. 10 years it took for me to be home with those children. 10 years later, I compiled those stories, put it together in a book, and too terrified of the world, right? Too terrified of rejection, I decided to reach out to a local press to self-publish it. And I thought it'll be out. My friends will buy it. My sister will buy it and tell me I'm stupid. My friends will support it, right? And then I submitted it for an award that I really didn't think would amount to anything. And I live in Oregon, the Oregon Book Awards. I received notification that it was one of the finalists. I said, great, I'm ready to die today. That's all I wanted. Just a little bit of, it got somewhere. And of course, COVID happened. I bought this dress. I was going to show up for the awards show. I was ready. COVID happened, no awards show, but something nostalgic happened. We got to listen to the awards be announced over the radio, and it was beautiful. And it was like the good old days in Nigeria. And when they announced my name, everything changed. I think I then believed, and the thing that I always thought I believed, that I could put forth whatever I wanted, and with a lot of hard work, right? I don't want it to come across as if I just, threw it out there and it floated out into the exact right hands and then it landed in my lap, with, all of this fortune. But I self-published it and it won this award. My then publisher went out of business, right? Which this is this is how life has always been, the continuous roller coaster that it is. Went out of the business. The book couldn't be purchased by anyone, anywhere. Then I received an offer from another publisher who wanted to release a second edition of it. So behind me is the old version. The art also was created by my eldest daughter. Wow. And so the second edition is this copy, and this is maybe this is my sixth baby. That was number 5. This is number 6. And so this will be released in April, on April 4th. Let me tell you, the blessings that have come my way over the years, I don't, balk at them. I know that they've come for a reason. I'm grateful for every single one of them. I will, of course, the next couple months, be working out there and running around, selling them out of my trunk. Well, I won't have to sell my trunk like I used to. The old version, I used to go to bookstores and beg people to take them. Now they'll be available all over the country, all over the world.
Come on.
Yeah. And listen, if you want to talk to me, you want to reach me or see what I'm cooking or, what I'm wearing to, whatever, you want to see my puppies. I'm on Facebook. I'm on Instagram. You can find it with my name, Keisha Joseph Fisher. I'm on Twitter, not as much. I should be, but I've taken some time off of that. There's too much controversy around it. Anyway, I'm out there. I love hearing from people. If you've read any of my work and have questions, want to know why I'm so crazy, please, feel free to reach out. I'm always, open to a conversation.
Amazing, amazing, amazing. Congrats again on everything. And thank you so much for being willing to be a part of the Fem Future podcast family.
You're so welcome. I'm grateful to you for the connection. I look forward to seeing all of your success. You're gonna do great things. I just know it. Keep your voice out there. We need it. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And thanks for being a guest. And thanks for everyone that's tuning in. Until next time, let's continue to engage, encourage, and support each other as we work together to curate a FEM future.